Welcome everyone. Just give a couple of minutes for people to join and to connect their audio. So while we wait for people to join, if you could just pop your name and organization into the chat, just say hello to everyone there, that would be great. So just a note that this webinar will be recorded, just so that we can keep it as a record and we can share it with you afterwards as well. So do pop your name and your organization in the chat. Okay, I'm going to get going because I know everyone's time is precious. So just a little introduction to us first. So I am Lauren and I'm the Senior Project Manager for Inclusion and Climate Justice at SOS UK, and kind of oversee the race report as a project. And today I'm joined by my colleague Rachel, who's Head of Research and Impact and is your kind of go-to person for anything data related. We also have Molly on the call, who will kind of be monitoring the chats. So if you do have any questions in there, just pop them in and Molly will let us know. If you haven't already, put your organisation name and your own name in the chat. And as I say, if there's any questions, do put them throughout. We'll also leave some space at the end for you to ask questions, if you want to ask them verbally. Okay, so what to expect from today? So the agenda of today's webinar is broken down into 5 different sections. So what the race report is and what are the aims, how it works and some kind of like exciting new developments that we've got for 2025, data collection, data submission, and then the wider support that we provide and the opportunities that there are to get involved in 2025. And then we'll end with a Q&A session. So that will be your opportunity to ask any direct questions to us. Okay, let's get started. So where did the concept of the race report come from? So in 2022, SOS UK carried out some research sponsored by IEMA and NERC, and we found that environmental professionals were made up of 4.8% of people identifying as Black, Asian, or other minority ethnic backgrounds. And that's compared to 12.6% for all professions. So that's when you're looking at the data from the Office of National Statistics. As you can see from the visual on the screen, it shows a significant lack of racial and ethnic diversity in environment and conservation professions. So we've decided that we've got to do better as a sector to be more representative of the communities that we're working to serve. And so the race report was created. So the aims of the race report are, and this kind of links back into kind of speeding up diversity and inclusion within the environmental sector. So number one, creating transparency. We want to be transparent first and foremost to show an accurate and relevant picture of our sector. So again, we can go further and faster towards EDI. Secondly, we work with the sector. So it's not just about collecting data, but also using our team's expertise to kind of make significant improvements as a sector. And our third objective is to bring organisations together for kind of collective and shared learnings so that we can move forwards towards a common goal. And the race report does this so that organisations feel less on their own and there's that real sense of togetherness and accountability as a sector. And now I'm going to hand over to Rachel to describe how it all works.
Cool, thanks, Lauren. So I've got a diagram here which hopefully simplifies things, but yeah, if it just makes things even more complicated, then always just put some questions in the chat. But this is just meant to map out how data and reporting works across the campaign. So you can see kind of on the left-hand box, this describes the data that is submitted by organisations. So there's 4 categories there. So organisation characteristics, your race and ethnicity data for staff and governance bodies, where that's applicable, information on the policies, strategies and actions that you're taking on diversity and inclusion, and intersectional identities data for overall staff. And those dashed lines shows that it's an optional element of your data submission. Then on the right-hand side is what we do with that data that you submit, and you can see that the numbers that correspond with the data are shown in those two boxes, the top one of which shows the main aggregated report that we produce at the end of the campaign year. So all of the data that organisations submit goes into that aggregated report, but it is on that combined basis. No individual organisation's data is shown in that central report. And then the second box beneath that on the right-hand side shows what goes into the individual transparency cards for organisations, and we'll pick up on a bit in a bit more detail on this later. But you can see that there's different data goes into the cards for smaller organisations than goes into those for organisations which have more than 30 staff members. So in addition to the main data submission process, again, this is something that we'll be talking in a bit more detail about later on in this webinar, but we are also running the staff perceptions survey this year. So this diagram kind of outlines the different aspects of that process. So there's the data that survey participants submit, and there's a whole range of different questions that participants in the research provide to us. And then we use that data to publish a survey findings report. Again, that's aggregated, it's all combined together and presented as a single report. But then we do also share the data from participating organisations with those organisations as a summary report. So that just gives an overview of the different types of data and how they're used in the race report. And I'll get into a bit more detail about those two aspects. So in terms of completing your data submissions, this is all the race and ethnicity diversity data to the race report, the main element of the race report. And to start off with, there's kind of 3 suggested stages to submitting your data. So the first stage is to familiarise yourself with the types of data that we're collecting. So we have a list of data points available in the resources section of our website, which is essentially a copy of the submission form that you'll be completing. And you can use that to see what it is we're asking for and to see kind of how your data relates to that. The second stage is to go about that data collection, or if you already have data for this year, to collate it for your organisation according to those data points. And finally, when you're ready, when you've been through that process, it's time to submit your data via our online data collection form. Going back to those data points, there's 3 main sections to that form. So to start off with, section A is kind of administration details, so kind of what kind of organisation yours is, kind of how many staff work for it, what topics you cover, what's the kind of main theme that you focus on, just to give us a kind of almost like organisation demographics. And that's a mandatory element of the submission form. Section B is the main kind of chunk of the data submission, and that's where we'll ask about race and ethnicity data for your staff and governance bodies. And that's kind of broken down into a number of different staff categories. So we can really understand how diversity and representation is reflected in different kind of levels of seniority or different responsibilities or contract type. Also in section B is that intersectional data. This is an optional element of the race and ethnicity data submission aspect. Finally, the last section is section C, and this is where we ask you about the action that you're taking on diversity and inclusion. There's a number of different categories that encompass a range of different ways that your organisation might be working on equality, diversity and inclusion. This is optional, but we do strongly encourage organisations to complete that, just so we can see where kind of action is concentrated and where there might be kind of gaps in what the sector as a whole is doing. So in terms of collecting your data, if that's something you're already doing, please try to submit as much data as possible, as it really helps us build up a full picture of diversity across the sector. As I mentioned before, the advice here is to review the data that you already have against our data points. We've tried to build them so that they encompass different methods and tools that organizations might use, recognizing that everybody probably does this data collection in slightly different ways to kind of best fit how their organization works and the staff that they have. It might be that there's some variation in what you're asking to compare to our data points, and there might be some kind of analysis or combination that needs to happen to align them. So yeah, if you're struggling to see kind of how to align your data with what we're asking for, do just get in touch and we'll work through that together. So this is something that's new to your organization and you've not collected any diversity data about your staff before. We do have some resources that you might find useful just to get you going with that. So we have a staff survey template that you can use as a basis for your data collection practices. There's kind of a static PDF version if you already have like a survey program that you use, and we've also developed a Microsoft Forms template that you can duplicate, and it's kind of already set up, although it does need some editing just to make it bespoke to your organization. There are a number of different ways you can collect the data beyond that. So it might be that you already have a staff survey that gathers other details about staff experience in your organization, and questions could be added to that. Or, for example, at SOS we ran the diversity data collection as kind of a bespoke survey last year, a standalone exercise. So it's worth noting that the template covers a whole range of protected characteristics and different identities, because we felt that kind of if you're going through this process of capturing data about your staff, that additional data might be useful to support your wider EDI work, as well as participation in the race report or kind of a focus on race and ethnicity. So that's why those additional questions are in there, and they're not something that we ask you to submit in your data submission. So once you've gone through all that data collection process, it's really useful to use this data collation tool that we've developed just to help you kind of go through and check and make sure everything adds up. So this is available as a download from our resources page on the website. I'm actually just going to stop sharing this presentation and share the tool instead, just so you can see what it looks like. And how it can help you with your data submissions. Just share instead. So hopefully you can now see this spreadsheet instead. Lauren or Molly, if you can't see it, please shout. But yeah, basically this replicates the online submission form. So it'll go through each of the questions that you will see online. But you'll see, I'll zoom in a bit small. You'll see that there are some instructions on like what data we're looking for in each question, and like how to fill it in the grey boxes next to each question. So the idea here is that you kind of add your data into the spreadsheet, and then can use this to upload to the data submission form. It's got some things built into it to help you check the data. For example, once you add your figures in here, it will do a running total of the data that you're adding, so you can see if things are correct. So for example, if you've got 18 members of staff and the numbers you've added in only add up to 17, you know that somebody's missing somewhere, and you need to have another look at that and see where they need to be added to. So that's built into all of the data where you have to, all of the questions where you have to add in kind of raw data. So yeah, really hope this is useful for you. If there's any suggestions on how we can improve that to help you with this process, then definitely let us know. Cool, so I'm going to go back to sharing this presentation. Hopefully that's now back on your screens. I'll move on to the next slide. So yeah, once you've gone through the collation and checking process and you're ready to submit your data, just head to the Race Report website and look for the green box that says submit in the top right hand corner of the homepage. But yeah, really worth remembering this. The form, unfortunately, cannot be saved as you go through it. So it does need to be completed all in one go. Again, that's another reason to use that data collation tool, so everything is all kind of ready and to hand before you start your submission. If you do have any problems making that submission, or you realize afterwards something's incorrect, don't worry, we will be checking and reviewing everything that gets submitted. And if we notice anything, we will be in touch with you. And vice versa, you can let us know if you know that you've done something that you want to edit after you click that submit button. On the data submission form, if there's anyone in the room who's been through the process previously, you'll notice this year that we've made a small tweak to the online data collection form this year. So when you get onto the kind of section in section B, where you're providing your race and ethnicity data, ahead of actually adding in your data, you'll be asked to let us know which categories you're submitting data against. So for each question, you'll be presented with a list such as is shown on screen here. And in this question, you select the identity groupings that you have data for. And that means that in the question where you're actually entering the data, you'll only be shown the boxes that you have to put something into. We found from feedback last year that people often struggled with working out the kind of boxes, and often found it hard to kind of see where data should be added when there's multiple different points. So hopefully this will ease the process. But again, we're really open to feedback on all these systems and processes. So if something isn't working for you, or you're struggling with something, do always get in touch with us, and we'll work on improving it. So for those of you that have been through the process before, this might mean that there's a change in the numbers of the data points. So if you're using kind of spreadsheets or things that you've used in previous years, it's worth kind of double checking those. So that's a brief run through of the data collection and submission process. And now I've got a few slides just on some elements of the reporting. So as you might recall from the start of this presentation, the data that you submit will go into producing your transparency card. So each organisation that takes part will receive a transparency card. But we have two different categories of card, which are based on the size of an organisation, based on its staff headcount. So small organisations are those with under 30 staff headcount, and standard is what we're describing as 30 and above staff headcount. It's worth noting that overall no base sizes are given, so no like total numbers of staff are provided, and we don't use any data labels on the chart that are featuring some of the transparency cards, and we do this to try and protect the identities of small populations, because we do not want to kind of reveal people's personal characteristics and identities that they might not wish to be in kind of public domains. Within the data submission form, there is the opportunity to note if you have any concerns about the publication of your data. and we'll be in touch with you to follow up on those concerns after you make your data submission, and work together to find a report that kind of satisfies your concerns. So in terms of the data that appears on the transparency card, say small organizations, we really only present the kind of organization demographics, so like the admin details about the organization, and that section C data and what organizations are doing this policy, strategy and action on EDI. For those that are fall into the standard organization category, so that's 30 or more members of staff, kind of the full data that features in the data submissions is presented on the transparency card. So that's the kind of organization characteristics and demographics, the race and ethnicity data, and the policy, strategy and action on EDI. For both groupings of organizations, all three sections will feed into the aggregated report, but no names or kind of individual organizations are referenced in that main aggregated report. It's all kind of grouped together as a collective from all of the organizations that take part. So in terms of the data, that kind of covered the kind of process side of things, but in terms of the data for 2025, there's some key developments that I'm just going to run through now. So those of you that took part last year, and for anyone that didn't and has read the report, you'll see that we started last year collecting intersectional data, and we're continuing with that in 2025. Again, the participation in that is optional, but it is encouraged if that's something you're able to contribute. Taking part involves cross-tabulating race and ethnicity data with other personal characteristics, and it kind of really shows us in a lot more detail who is and isn't represented in the sector. So as I mentioned this year, we're kind of carrying on with the data that we collected last year in the categories that we cross-analysed against each other, but we're expanding that to include all the characteristics that are based on the Equality Act. So these are age, gender and disability. Those are the three that we included last year in the pilot. And the new categories this year are gender reassignment, sexual orientation, maternity, paternity or adoption leave, marriage and civil partnership, and religion and belief. So just to kind of help bring that to light a bit and see kind of what it is that looks like, these are some examples of the data that we collected through the 2024 pilot. And you can see here the kind of cross-tabulation of race and ethnicity with gender identity. And you can see kind of the differences there between the kind of racial and ethnic groupings that we use in our analysis. So, for example, people of colour and those from other ethnically minoritized groups. Within that population, 66% identified as a woman, whereas people who identify as white, only 59% of that group identify as women. And on the other side of the page, you can see the same kind of cross-tabulation with race and ethnicity and disability. So you can see that within the group of people of colour and other ethnically minoritized groups, 13% identify as disabled, but that is 6% within white identities. So I'm just going to stop sharing again the presentation and show you a bit more about how to go about getting to this data, because I know that it might not be something that's included as standard in kind of your own work with the data that you collect. So I'm just going to share a spreadsheet which uses pivot tables, which I don't know if everyone's familiar with how they work. Basically, it's a tool within Excel that kind of auto-generates tables based on a kind of bigger data set, and it's quite useful to be able to kind of It's like very user friendly. You can like drag and drop things into the table. So if we start with a spreadsheet like this, so this is might be what your data looks like if you've carried out a survey. So you can see here along the top row are the questions that you might ask. So we've got all the kind of demographic data here along the top row. And then people's answers are in the rows beneath that. So each row is a person within the organization. And then to get to the pivot table bit, what you do is you just highlight all of your data and the kind of headings of each column. And then you go on to insert pivot table. Just going to create it into a new worksheet. You can just put it on the same one. And then what it does is kind of bring up this kind of menu on the left-hand side. And you can see right-hand side even, sorry, do not know my left right today. And you can see kind of the questions that you want to ask that you've asked in your survey. And then what you can do is just drag and drop them into these boxes on the right-hand side. And sometimes it can be a bit of a trial and error to get them into the right place to show what you want to find out. But in this case, because we want to cross-tabulate things against race and ethnicity, I'm going to put that in the rows and then say we want to find about how that correlates with people's age. We can put that in the columns. And then I'll just move this over so you can see what it does. Oh, no, I need to put something in. This is where I always forget how to do it myself. And you put the number, the values that you want to show, so the number of people from each race and ethnicity category in each age group in the values column as well. And then it magically calculates from your raw data how many people are in each of the age categories, in each of the race and ethnicity categories that you've asked about. So yeah, really useful tool in Excel to help you get to the data that feeds into the intersectional data element of the data submission process here. I don't think we have this spreadsheet available, this example available on our resources page, but if anyone would find that useful, yeah, we can share that. It's just kind of an example of how to set up the pivot table. Cool, okay, going back to the presentation. So if that is something that you want to be part of, the questions are built into the data submission form, but there is like a question in our sign up form on the website to when you're indicating the organization is going to be part of the race report this year, for you to indicate that this is something you will take part in. But yeah, it's just built into the submission form. Just a reminder that any of the data that you submit won't be published on your transparency cards because the data kind of breaks down staff numbers into quite granular detail, and there's a risk of individuals being identifiable. So yeah, we're only presenting it on an aggregated basis, and no organisation names will be featured alongside the data. But yeah, as with everything, just get in touch if you have any questions about that aspect of the campaign. So I'm going to move on to another thing that's running not new this year, but it is a biannual part of the programme. So it didn't run last year, but yeah, this year we're running the staff perception survey again. It's really designed to kind of sit alongside the quantitative diversity data that we get through the data submission process, and ask staff working in the sector about their perceptions of experiences, what it's like being in their organisation as an employee, a member of staff. And then we can use that data to look at the different experiences and perceptions of those with different characteristics and backgrounds. It reflects kind of that need for diversity and inclusion to be kind of tackled together. So a diverse organization could be achieved without having an inclusive culture and inclusive organization, and vice versa. So this staff perception survey allows us to see how the data that we're collecting through diversity is translated into experiences of inclusion within the organizations that are taking part. As I mentioned, it's run by Annalee, so we ran it first in 2023, and the report for that survey is available on our website if you want to have a look back at that. And then it will be next running in 2027. It's available for any organisation that's participating in the race report. So just let us know if that's something that you want to opt into. The survey itself will run from 12th of June to 3rd of July. So once you've kind of opted in, we'll be in touch with you with all the details, and I'll just go through some of that in the next slide. But yeah, if you want to be part of the staff perception survey this year, just to allow us to kind of do all the setup and things that we need to do to allow you to participate, we need organisations to opt in by the 2nd of June. If you've already signed up to this year's campaign and didn't opt in or aren't sure, then again, just get in touch. So in terms of actually taking part, so how do people in your organisation complete the survey? So once you've opted in, we will provide you with a link to an online survey that is shared with your staff members. So you as an organisation would be responsible for collecting the data or getting people to reply, but the responses come directly to the race report team. So it's our survey, our online survey that they are answering, rather than your organisation having to set up its own survey and then share details. We also felt that the delivery of the survey by the race report might encourage completion and allows people to potentially feel a bit more anonymous than they might do completing an internal survey. So yeah, we host the survey, but organisations promote it and encourage their staff to complete. The questions in the survey are mainly closed questions, but there are a few open-ended for people to expand on their experiences. And they go through a kind of a whole range of different topics, as you can see in that pull-out box on the right-hand side of the screen. So their experiences of kind of discrimination and harassment, their ability to be themselves at work, sense of belonging, opportunities and progression, and kind of a general sense of the organization's culture. You can see a full copy of the questions on our resources page as well. So we will ask staff to identify what organization they work for, characteristics, or contact details, search opportunities, so they can be completely kind of anonymous from kind of name basis if they wish. So as I mentioned at the start, the data is published in aggregate form only, so we combine the responses from all organisations and publish a report that shares the findings. We don't include this data on people's transparency cards, and we don't produce individual kind of reports for organisations that are published on our website. But organisations can request a summary of their data from us, and we do specify on a kind of consent statement that people completing the survey can read through, that their data will be shared with the kind of management or HR teams of their organisation. So yeah, we really hope that this is a useful insight for you and your organisation's work on EDI, as well as showing kind of experiences across the sector through that combined aggregated report. So I'm going to hand back over now to Lauren, who's going to talk you through some of our support and offer directly for the data submissions and staff perception survey side of things, but also the wider opportunities that we're delivering this year.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Rachel, for all that detail on how to take part. I know there's been a couple of questions in the chat, so do pop them there, or we've got plenty of time at the end if you want to follow up on anything that Rachel's said. Yeah, as I say, we appreciate there's a lot of information, but our race report team are kind of here to support you along the way. So talking of support, we've got a range of ways that we can support you with collecting and submitting the data. Our next data submission support webinar is on the 16th of July. So if you do feel like you need a refresh, or if you feel like someone else within your organization, it would be beneficial for them to come along, we'll share the details of that at the end. But in addition to that, we can pop in like a one-to-one call if you'd rather have sort of like a bespoke chat between our team and your staff members, that's okay as well. We also have our race report newsletter. We've got FAQs on the website and various other resources. And also you can always email us. And you can see the email, our email address will be on the last slide. We also have learning exchanges. As I mentioned right at the beginning, the race report team do way more than just collect the data. We want to kind of bring people together for that sort of collective learning. So do come along to our learning exchange spaces. It's where we kind of explore good inclusive practice, what's working, what's not working, and we use them as space for organizations to connect with each other and to kind of really unpick specific topical areas. They're a really great space to learn from other organizations and progress together. So our upcoming webinars, we have the recruitment webinar, so that's where we'll be focusing on all things recruitment practices on the 21st of May. And we've got a retention webinar on the 18th of June. We've selected these as key areas because they're using the data and using feedback from different organizations. These were two key topic areas where people wanted to know more about and to kind of delve into and unpick some of the challenges that are faced. So yeah, do come along to those. You can sign up via our website or using the QR code there. And if you're anything like me and you love an in-person event, we've got the Race Summit on the 3rd of July, which is at KCL, so King's College London. So do jot that date down in your diary. This is in partnership with DSI, so Diverse Sustainability Initiative, and Synchronicity Earth. And it's a day filled with workshops, open conversations, connection. It's really not one to miss. We did our first one last year. It was a huge success. And it's a great way to kind of come together and really put some of our kind of learnings into practice in a physical space. Just want to say a massive thank you to Esme Fairbairn Foundation for their continued support and the funding of the race report, and also the partners that I mentioned there, so that we can kind of bring everybody together in this amazing race summit. So do come along to that if you're available. And then last but not least, just a final reminder of some of the key dates. I'll just leave this on the screen for a moment in case you want to take a quick note or a quick snap on your phone if you're like me and you like that visual cue. We will send the slides around afterwards, but the submissions are open already. And so you're able to submit your data, as Rachel kind of took you through earlier. The submissions close for the data submission on the 26th of September. And you can also see on the right-hand side of the screen the deadlines for the staff perception survey as well. So do keep a note of that. And our report publication, which is where we kind of come together and we kind of share the findings from this year's data, will be on the 2nd of February 2026, which sounds like a long time away, but I'm sure it will come round really quickly. So we will open the floor now to any questions. Can be data related, it can be related to any of the support that we've mentioned here. And I'll just open the floor to anyone who wants to come in.
I'm just going to stop sharing so I can see properly and open the chat properly because there's questions in there. Does anyone have any questions? I think Molly has very efficiently answered some of the requests already. But yeah, does anyone have any questions at this stage about any of the steps or any of the categories that we're asking for, about how your data can fit with the what we're asking for? Obviously, it might be kind of not something that you've looked into just yet if you're joining us this year for the first time, or if you've been doing this for like 3 years already, you kind of know what you're doing. But yeah, when you get to it, just let us know if you have any other questions that come up. So I can see Svetlan's asked, does it matter when data is collected? No, so we kind of don't put a specific date on things just because we know that organizations operate to kind of their own kind of time frames, and what works best for one organization for data collection probably doesn't work for others. And when you think about, I think last year we had 161 organizations represented in the data. So trying to get all those organizations to do things on a specific date would be challenging. So we just work on a basis of kind of the latest available data. So it can be collected any time really since your last data collection. So you might have already done it. So you might already, if you do a staff survey in January, we don't expect you to do another one to generate data just for this exercise. So use the data that you're already collecting and analyzing. But as long as it's kind of like your latest available data is just what we ask for submission. Doesn't look like anyone else has any questions, or if there any last minute thoughts that have come up.
Perfect. Well, I can just do a little wrap up, and we've all got a little bit
Sorry,
of time.
Lauren.
Oh, sorry.
Just popped in with another question.
Another question, love that.
Yeah, so she works for a large organization that has over 1,000 staff members, and it would be unlikely to get all staff. Do you mean, sorry, can I just ask you, do you mean for your data collecting data for your data submission, or for the staff perception survey?
Both.
I think it's always likely that that's the case. Even in small organizations, people might not want to participate. And I guess this is something to think about in terms of how you kind of promote the survey. So things that we've found useful are kind of really communicating why the data is being collected, and why that kind of fits with your organization's aims and goals and kind of ethos. And really trying to help people understand why they're being asked for this data is something that I would really recommend to try and encourage as many people to complete the survey as possible. Things like giving quite a long time for people to answer also helps. Using different angles to kind of reach out to people as well. So thinking about whether you can do it through kind of line management or team meetings, just kind of obviously giving the opportunity rather than kind of a forced completion. But yeah, I think it is likely that not everyone's going to complete it, but taking the steps that you can to encourage as many people as possible would be good. So, and we do have like, sorry, I'm just thinking of things to say as I'm talking. We do have in each question that you ask, where you ask for data about your staff, there is a kind of not disclosed category. So anyone who doesn't answer the survey that say you have like 1,000 staff members, if you only get say 800 responses, then 200 people haven't answered the survey. So you can put them in that not known category. So it kind of like builds up a full picture of your organization, even though some are not known. Because what we have actually seen over the years that we've been doing this campaign for the organizations that have taken part in all 3 years, the proportion of people who are not disclosing their data has reduced. So as this practice becomes more embedded in organizations and people like understand the value of the data and like why they're being asked and kind of the positives that the data can contribute to, then I think that has shifted. So yeah, hopefully that helps in some ways. But yeah, if other people have recommendations of what they've done to get responsives, then please do feel free to pop those in the chat. To see another question for Polly. Small organization, only 5 members of staff. Do you include trustees in reporting? So trustees are included in a separate category. So when you're talking about overall staff numbers, don't include your trustees in those. They have a separate category because they're not like members of staff. So yeah, there's a separate category for those. We have lots of organizations who are similar size to you. So you'll see kind of categories for small organizations when you're kind of adding doing the demographics and things like that. So we'll know that you're a small organization. There's a summit question as well. Lauren, do you want to take that?
Do you want me to take that one? Yeah, absolutely. We are really looking to kind of have more young people attend the Race Summit. So during lunch, we've got kind of different career stalls so people can go around and talk to people within organizations. So please do kind of come along and engage in that. And if you're an organization that's interested in that aspect of the summit, do just send us an email and we can send you some more information. We'll also have kind of support with networking to help kind of young people who may not have been in those sorts of situations before, who may be people of colour or people from racial and ethnically minoritized backgrounds, to be able to engage in a really useful way. So we'll be kind of embedding that throughout the day as well.
Oh. It doesn't look like there's any more last minute questions popping in. I'm not sure. But yeah, if you do think of something immediately as you press leave meeting, then just get in touch with us. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to do some resharing screen. Hopefully that's come back up again now. My computer just went crazy for a minute. But yeah, just a reminder. Sorry, Lauren, I've taken over.
It's okay. Do you want me to? I'll wrap everything up. But yeah, thank you so much for everyone's time. We know time is super precious. Do remember to sign up for 2025. Share the data and the work that we do with your networks. Share it with your CEOs, your trustees. Do sign up to our newsletter. We'll share these slides with you and get in touch if you have any further questions. And we've got an extra 10 minutes, which is lovely. But thank you, everyone.